Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Shine Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Shine Hills at shinehills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
Across the street and around the world, Shine Hills.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. And Nathan, you look like you're in your, legislative mode today.
I am
You got
today.
your pen.
Yeah.
You had your name tag. You took
I
that
took
one
that off. Yeah.
So this is a big week. Is
right.
today the start, or is yesterday the start? The governor had an address to the
Right.
state.
Governor's prayer breakfast. Yeah.
Well, and that was this morning.
So
But wasn't yesterday something?
No. So Monday is when everything kicked off. But the way things go, it kind of starts off slow because you have to.
Okay.
So the governor had a State of the State address, and then you have the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and then the Speaker in the House of Representatives, and the President of the Senate in the Senate also give their address. That's all on Monday.
Now, did you go?
I didn't get to go to that one. I had so many other things I was
And
doing.
so they just addressed the things
Right.
that a direction for our state.
Right. And then it is off to the races very
Yeah.
fast. Now, on the outside, it may not look like much is happening, but every single bill that is being presented, the clerk, has to read the bill title and read a list on the jacket, and then the speaker will then assign it to a committee and then rap his gavel,
Okay.
and then it will go to that committee. But to read them all in takes time, and
Okay.
that's statutory, so you have to do it.
So then how do they decide who's going to be on what committees? Who does that?
That's the speaker. The
He
Speaker of the
decides.
House, right, or the President of the Senate.
Okay, right.
And he'll have some assistants,
Okay.
sometimes from the majority floor leader or other people, but he decides who's on those committees, and normally that's for a 2-year period.
Okay.
And then secondly, he has the ability to decide what bills will be heard in which committee. So there's a lot of power that resides in either the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta drill down on something here because
Right.
we've talked about that the one bill in committee that would really affect public schooling private schools, Christian schools, homeschooling is have the money attached to the.
Right.
So 2 questions. One, is there any bill like that? And or last time it got shut down, I think it was 7-2.
Right.
That said nope, we're not going to even get it out of committee. Can he select new people on that committee, or how does that work?
Yes, you could actually do that, but that is not likely to happen.
Okay.
But there is a bill similar. It's a very thick bill. This year, one of the things that we all have to be mindful of is the fact that any bill in the budget session, you have to have 2/3 of the House or 2/3 of the Senate in the House of Origin. So they have to agree on an introduction vote because primarily they're here to work on the budget.
Oh, gotcha.
So any other
this
bill,
may not even
Right.
rise to that level
Right.
of discussion.
a lot of times,
Oh, wow.
most bills actually, or many bills, not most, but many bills will fail the introductory vote, and not because people completely disagree with the bill, but because they recognize that there's like 3 things I want to get through,
Mhm.
or that's really high on their list, and so they really want to focus on that.
So you see a bill that you're interested in, or that has something to do with the family, and that you want to speak to. Do you go to the committee and listen and what's going on?
Yes.
And then in the lobby, as a lobbyist, I guess you would
Right.
say, you talk to some of those people on committee and say, here's some things we would like to see you consider.
That's right.
That's what
Yes,
happens.
absolutely. And one of the things, this is what I love about Wyoming, because people are so close to their representatives. So when I was in the House, my neighbor, I would go home over the weekend, and my neighbor would pop his head over the fence, and he'd ask about this, that, or the other, and we'd just talk. And that's what I love about representative democracy, a constitutional republic.
Right.
And so when you think about that, you can actually go down there, and it's not some sort of convoluted, scary process. You really can reach out and talk to your state representative.
Right.
And so it's worth doing. The other thing too, you find out real quick is people care. They really do care.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in our culture today that are trying to destroy the basis of our democratic freedoms by simply tearing at the system. But our founders put the system in place because it does work, and it's the best way to actually have a representative democracy.
Well, and then in even those personal relationships, I mean, you had served in the legislature for 6 or 8 years,
Right.
and know probably a lot of those faces still today,
very
and
much.
are able to, I just like, I'm going to talk about the prayer breakfast in a second, but all those people are just lining up, or you're talking to people that that are involved in those legislature
It's a
and
blessing.
in the process. So I think it's an amazing process, and I enjoy kind of seeing it through your lens. It's helpful for me as a real outsider. I mean, I know enough just to know kind of the big things, but how it actually happens is really fascinating to me. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the prayer breakfast, because the governor had a prayer breakfast, which they always do. This one we've always had a table there. Our church has always purchased a table. I think I've been to the last, I don't know, probably the last 10, I suppose. And this morning, it was wall to wall people.
It was.
Could you believe how many people were there?
Like you, I've been going to these about 12 years, and it was the largest one I recall.
Well, that's what me too. I just thought,
was
man,
wonderful.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think?
Well, last year, I think they had one, but it was
That's
very
true.
limited.
That's
And
true.
then I think the year before with COVID,
Yeah.
they didn't have one at all.
Yeah.
But I think right now, I got this impression that our country is beginning to really recognize how important it is that we turn our hearts toward the Lord.
Okay, so that's what I was hoping that's happening there. That
I hope so.
I hope it wasn't just some. We had a great speaker. I want to talk about her in just a
Right.
second, but anyway, you were the MC. You did a fabulous job of opening it up and really, really kind of brought a tone. And it made me realize how important it is to, that person that's going to set the tone of, it's going to be Christ-centered. And everybody that came up, whether the head of the Senate or the House of Representatives, they did their reading, but their commentary was Christ-centered. It was
Right.
spot on, and as from my perspective, and I just thought, man, it was cool. You really set a
Right.
cool tone, and I just think it carried all the way through the governor's prayer
Well,
breakfast.
praise the Lord for that. I will say it was truly a joy. Our governor has tried to set a tone of warmth. And, so there's a lot of different political opinions. For instance, in that room today,
Oh, sure.
there's a lot of different political opinions. But what you really got a sense of, and what I hoped to help, and I know you did too, is the opportunity to lay all of those aside.
Yes.
And let's just look at what brings us together. And ultimately, the God who gave us this country
Yeah.
to preserve and protect
Yep.
is someone that we ought to honor and worship. And at the end of the meeting, the governor had asked you to close us in prayer.
Yep.
So you're the final prayer.
Yeah, I got to of all these times I got to be in the do the benediction. It was an honor.
was
I was
great.
honored to do that. It was
Well,
fun.
but also what I appreciated is you were able to pull from several different things from our speaker. Oh, she did a great job.
She did.
But you pulled several of those things together and then called everyone essentially to turn their hearts toward home, as Dr. Dobson used to say it.
Yeah.
Just kind of let's refocus the
Yeah.
direction. And I really feel like today the Lord met with us. It was good.
Yeah, it was. I thought from
What'd you think of
start to
Amberly?
finish. Well, I was so impressed. Of course, now just to give more detail,
Right.
Those of us that got to be a part of the prayer breakfast, actually yesterday, I got to go to the governor's mansion. I'd never been to the governor's mansion, and we had lunch there, and then a dress rehearsal afterwards, so that everybody knew when to come up and everything. And so my wife and I got there early enough that we talked to Amberly quite a bit, and so. So Amberly Snyder, I don't know how old she is now. She kept talking about 18, and that accident happened.
And it sounded like it was about 10 years ago. So I'm guessing 27, 28.
Okay, and so she was in a car accident when she was 18 in Wyoming, actually, of all things. She was coming across Wyoming and rolled her truck and broke her back, and so is paralyzed from the waist down. Basically, is her story. And her courage, the story of her courage, of her, I don't know, that's the main thing, of strength, overcoming to get back, not only to get on a horse,
Right.
but to compete on a very high, I mean, the professional level.
Right.
In CFD, I didn't know she competed last year at CFD.
Right.
And she's competed in the American. She's competed. I mean, I was just jaw dropped in what she's accomplished. And I didn't realize that until we heard her story, what all
Right.
she's accomplished. And, but wow, what a story of perseverance,
Mm-hmm.
of courage. And she did it with such grace. She's a beautiful girl, such grace and humor.
Right.
You know, she just had us laughing the whole time.
Right.
And then she'd make a point of just, don't ever give up on your dream or don't, whatever it was. I just thought, man, she did a fabulous
Right.
job. I was super impressed, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Well, I think that was something, I don't know if you saw this. So I was sitting off on the side because I had to get up and down the stairs pretty quick. So I was sitting on a piano bench by the grand piano.
Okay.
And at one point, she actually tilted her
Did a
chair
wheelie.
back.
No, I saw that.
But when she did the wheelie, I don't think you may have been able to see it from the front. But from the side and the back, you could see she had swung her front wheels off the edge.
Is that right?
And I thought, oh, please don't go over.
I couldn't quite see that, but I knew she was close. And everybody just kind of go,
Right.
everybody kind of knew she was close and she just kind of wheeled
She did a
around.
great job,
Wow,
though.
that was amazing.
But at the end of the day, what I was so appreciative of is in her story, she talked about how those challenges, those infirmities, if you will, that have been placed in her life can become a testimony to someone else.
Yes.
And I really, in that room, undoubtedly there, especially with a crowd that size, I've never seen that room so full.
And so quiet. When she was talking,
Right.
you talk about a pin drop. She
Right.
really, everyone was riveted on every word. Yeah.
Certainly, there's someone else in the room that has gone through tremendous
Yeah,
heartache.
for sure.
And to be able to face those challenges with such grace
Yeah.
and give that as a testimony
Yeah.
of what we can do. It was a blessing. But
And I appreciated her verse, Philippians, was it 4:13? I can do all things through
things.
Christ who
Right.
strengthens me. And the one thing that I seriously could not believe, and we talked about this just a little before we came on this podcast. When she grabbed the saddle horn with
Right.
one hand and the fence with the other, her horse was real close to the fence.
Right.
And then she's sitting in her wheelchair and then basically did what I would call an iron cross muscle up. I mean, like you see the
Right.
gymnasts do,
Right.
and just pressed completely up and
Right.
then kind of plopped over on the saddle. It's like, holy smokes.
Right.
You talk about strength. And I was just impressed. And you know what, for me, it was a metaphor of her whole life. I mean, an unusual strength physically, but unusual strength in courage, unusual strength in perseverance and in hope. I mean, she has kept that alive. And then she talked about the movie. It's on Netflix.
Right.
Okay. Do you
I didn't
remember the
know
name of it?
Something rodeo. Walk, ride, rodeo.
There you go.
Oh, it's a great name.
I've
by
got
the
it.
way.
Yeah, I've got, and that was her goals. In fact, when she got into the hospital, they said, "Okay, so what are your goals?" And she goes, "Well, walk, ride, rodeo." And then they said, "Well, you're going to have to some smaller goals. How about getting from the chair to the bed?"
Right,
as
yeah.
goal number one. I just thought it was clever. How
Dream big, though. I love it.
Oh my
It
gosh!
was good.
Well, and now
Yeah.
she's hoping to walk, but she is rodeo, and they
Right.
strap her legs into the saddle.
She kept talking about a seat belt.
Okay.
And where I was sitting, I couldn't see the screen, but it sounds like there's a seat belt, and then she uses Velcro to kind of keep her legs from flopping. And
Oh my
but
gosh.
she's able to literally barrel race, and at one point won
amazing.
a bunch of awards or something.
Yeah. Yeah. She was the top of her game in high school, and she won all that. It was the top participant at the rodeo whenever that was, and she was 18. But yeah, she had she had straps on her legs, kind of closer to her knees, and then there were straps up around her waist. She is literally strapped onto that saddle,
Right.
running barrels full out. And I just think of the courage it would
Right.
take to do that, and the cooperation of the horse, because she said, and don't forget, I can't kick.
Right.
And so the horse has to, accelerate pretty much on his own. It was a touching, the whole story was just like, wow.
I'm sure you've seen it because of your background on horses, but I've seen multiple times horses roll over a person.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And what I was thinking
Slip
was,
or something. Yeah.
in something like that, normally you can maybe kick off. I've had
Yeah.
to kick off a horse one time. It was way back in the Yellowstone area, and I was glad I
So
was
you were
able
in the
to.
movie too?
Oh yeah, right.
She
yeah,
said
sure.
she was
No.
in the movie.
She was in some movie.
No,
I have
is in this the Yellowstone.
movie, and I'm not familiar with it. Very
anyway,
much, but
it's
yeah.
someone called her up, and she was apparently. I'm curious to
Right.
know
No,
what that was.
for me, I was actually in Yellowstone.
Okay.
She was in a movie.
She's-
So yeah, no. But so if a horse were to roll over, literally she's strapped to it.
Yeah,
And
no,
I thought
the
yeah,
same
you're right.
thing.
The courage
Oh gosh.
to do that. Oh my goodness.
Well, I was impressed with the whole thing. I was so thankful to the governor and his wife. His wife is really impressive too.
she's a very sweet lady.
She is involved with hunger and
Mhm.
was even the way I understood it was even at the governor's prayer breakfast was giving out food to people so they could take it to people. I mean,
Right.
even there it was kind of working this is her mantra is to
Yeah.
stamp out hunger in Wyoming. It's cool.
You heard her talk a little yesterday. She actually is very funny.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of humor.
Yeah.
But what I really like is she seems like a very grounded Wyoming lady.
Yes, for sure.
And so just understands things. You know, when you look at everything we've just experienced, at the end of the day, there is a kind of message that can come through to us because undoubtedly today in America, in our culture, we are facing challenges, difficulties.
Yeah, for sure.
And even through those difficulties, the Bible tells us, thou shalt keep him in perfect peace,
Yeah.
whose mind is stayed on thee. That's in the old language, but that's how I recall it. God keeps us in a place where we can actually excel and find strength in him. God, his strength is made perfect in weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes these adversities, they can make a Christian feel like, oh my goodness, I think I'm just going to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's when God can shine through the most. And so I think there is a message for us in what we've just heard today.
Well, one of the things we were leaving and ran into Diane Enzi
Mm-hmm.
and Mrs. Kirkbride. They were together. And my wife
Yeah.
was talking to him and everything. They were just chatting about the spiritual temperature of that room, and they all agreed that it's been a long time since they felt the spiritual, just the Spirit of God there. In the
Yes.
presence of God. And to your point, I just think that, whether our politics agree or not, I mean, to be united on the Spirit of God, and he's in us, and he's what unifies us. I just thought this is the stuff that we all need. And for the kickoff of the legislative session,
Right.
I hope it carries on. I really do. It was a real powerful morning. I thought.
Right.
Okay, so we've got to transition in some of these. What are some things that you're interested in, and maybe some bills that we should know about?
Right. Well, a couple of them are very big. I mean,
Okay.
we could do an entire podcast on a couple of them, but this year there are a couple that are very big, very important. One of them, Senate File 51, which is called the Fairness in Women's Sports Act.
Okay.
And we have Senator Wendy Schuler, who spent her career as a coach and actually was one of the early recipients of Title IX. And she was able to go to college on a sports scholarship.
Okay.
Well, that is being introduced in the Senate as we speak.
Okay.
And then there's another one as well. It's a trigger bill, and that is a bill if the Supreme Court does what we expect with the Dobbs case,
Okay.
the U.S. Supreme Court, then what it will do is it will help return us back to where we ought to have never left.
States will decide.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it will do away with the killing of children in the womb. And I think basically move us back toward where we were as a state in 1972 before Roe v. Wade was decided.
So you think in our state it'll pretty easy pass to the standards it used to be?
It's going to face some opposition.
Yeah.
I do believe it will pass. I really do believe
Yeah.
it will pass. But it's not going to pass it's not going to sail through.
Okay.
The other thing, too, in a budget session like this, any bill has to have an introduction vote. It's special. It's different than I was talking to someone from Alliance Defending Freedom just this morning, and they were talking about how different Wyoming is than most places, and it's not all bad. In a budget session, you have to introduce that bill, and 2/3 of the House have to be willing to vote yes, that will go through the process with it, because we're here
wow.
really to focus on the budget. And so that's the reason why they introduced that a number of years ago. It's not a bad thing at all.
Gotcha.
But
Just set the priorities.
Right,
Here's
exactly.
the priorities.
Because really what it was supposed to be is for emergent needs,
Yeah.
and so that's the reason why that's there. There is one state representative, that has proposed to do away with that. I think that would not be a good idea, because someone once said years ago that your liberties are under threat the most whenever legislature's in session.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No
Because
you have to deal with all the different kinds of dynamics, I suppose, of the up and down votes and whatnot. That's interesting. So, okay, let's go back to the Title IX real quick, because you mentioned that in passing. So is it the kind of bill that's going to say men cannot compete in women's sports? Is that what that is all about? Well,
and basically what it's going to say is it's that idea, but it's actually flipped the other way.
Okay.
To ensure that there is fairness in women's sports.
Okay.
There has to be a certain standard set that indeed a genuinely biological lady is competing against a genuinely biological lady.
Right.
Because there are unfair advantages between a biological lady and a biological male.
Sure.
And so when we put that in its proper context, what we're trying to do is preserve opportunities for our young ladies to compete on a fair playing field.
Right.
So that they can actually earn these scholarships to college and everything else. The promise that came out of Title IX back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why we have to be very honest about it. It sadly does push back, and we have to push back, but it's sad that we have to push back against the ideas of the sexual revolution, that men can just say that they're going to be women, and maybe even take certain kind of blocking drugs, hormone blocking drugs, but still it doesn't change the fact that in so many ways, with larger lung capacity, more blood flow, and many other different muscle structure and everything else, they still are a male, and you can't do away with that.
So all that stuff is going to be discussed in this. In this time. So how do you think that will that go through? Is that going to be narrowly passed, or what are you thinking? Because they're starting in the Senate, of course, again, they have to face a 2/3 introduction vote. Oh, okay. But because they're starting in the Senate, I think that there's a good chance that will make it through. I know a number of states are working on that this year. Make it through, meaning it'll be on the docket to be discussed. Right. I do. Yeah. And I really do believe that there are enough people in our country, and especially in Wyoming, that recognize truth for truth. Right. That truth is not something that just is made up and is malleable, but truth is rooted in core truths. Yeah. And so I think that there's enough of them where that's going to pass through. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so those are two. Do you have any others that maybe you're is anything kind of attached to the school? We've talked a lot about school vouchers, those kind of things. Is there anything that you see on that could possibly be talked about in those lanes? There is one. There's one bill, and I talked at length this morning with the representative who's bringing it. He asked for me just to take a look through it. There is, it's going to drop. I'm not sure exactly how far it will go. I don't know even what its bill number is just yet, because today at noon was the last minute for something to be released. Interesting. And this one is a pretty thick, pretty comprehensive bill. So I'm not sure if it will make it all the way through the process, but I really do believe that it will keep the conversation going. And in this case, it will, it's kind of like a backpack funding, something that can help. The catch, Tyler, there's a lot of good things in there. There's a couple things that I was recommending. This may not be what you want in the end, but I was impressed today. I had the opportunity to meet for the first time our new superintendent of public instruction. Okay. I was a fan of our last one, and so this guy is someone who I think really understands the value of education options. Yeah. And that's what we're hoping to make sure that many people know all across the state, that parents are the ones that God has entrusted with the raising of children. Yep. And so we need to give parents options. I visited with him just briefly, and I was impressed as well. His knowledge and just kind of his theological understanding of things. I was very
Right.
impressed with. I had no idea kind of what he was made of, and I was like, wow, he's a good guy to have in
Right.
this position. Is that an appointed position by the governor? How's that work?
No, sir, that's elected.
Okay.
But since our last superintendent of public instruction was asked to come to Virginia by their newly elected governor,
Okay.
we had an opening. And so what happens is the state Republican Party selects 3 candidates. The governor selects the last one just to fill the remainder of that term.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
there's-
so I did my own little lobbying, Nathan. This is my
Oh.
first time because you introduced me and we talked, and I was asking him what he does and what his scope is, and I said, well, I hope that somehow, I was telling him about our Christian school that's here,
Right.
and he was actually intrigued by it. He asked
Yeah.
me all kinds of questions about it. I said, what I'm hoping somehow, someone like you, somebody can attach some of the monies with these children, and I said, then that will make it possible for us to do. I mean, I said, there's a demand for this for some people, and for that to be attached, and he kind of gave me that. Well, I'm not sure this is going to be happening anytime soon, but I could tell that it was. He wasn't opposed to the idea,
Right, right.
nor was he shying away from that.
Look
thought.
at you.
So there you go. I'm part
lobbying.
lobbyist right
Wow.
there. Yeah, just like probably didn't
great.
really realize how significant of a position of a guy I was visiting with, but just a real down to earth guy that really was very engaged in
Right.
what we're doing here at our Christian school. So that was a fun connection.
That's good.
Okay, one more question,
Yeah.
and we've talked a little bit, maybe too long here on this, but what is the major? I'm not sure if I really have my finger on the pulse of our situation, financial situation as a state.
Mm-hmm.
How big are these decisions gonna be? I know
Right.
we talked about needing a lot of wisdom. Even the governor was talking about that just in general
Right.
the other day at the luncheon. What do you see?
Well, during a budget session, pardon me. So the governor will propose a budget. And a lot of times that's what you start with. But of course, it's just a proposal because any budget has to start in the legislature, specifically in the House of Representatives.
Okay.
And on that budget, there are, at the end of the day, a couple billion, sometimes multiple billions of dollars overall. Now, many of those have already been, they're already designed to go to different directions and different agencies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you are voting on oftentimes hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so this is how a person can pray for a legislator. In the mix and in all of those different things, you're trying to actually make the best decision based upon your principles and then based upon your constituents. And so when you think about that, you have to be a very thoughtful person who is trying your absolute best to live up to the principles that you know are right and which you have shared with the people back home.
Okay.
So you're living up to who you've always said you are.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that means, though, especially during the middle of the actual budget, that you are making multiple multi-million-dollar decisions, one after the other, sometimes 20 or 30, right in a row. And so it takes a lot of prayer.
Oh, man.
And so that's where we really do, as a state,
We need to be praying for this
praying for them.
process.
Right.
This is big. I could tell just by the way, in general, the governor was talking about that the other day, and it's like there's a lot of big decisions to be made.
Right.
And even in the benediction, I prayed for wisdom. James
Right.
1:5.
Amen.
If anybody lacks wisdom, let him ask God. And I hope that people will, take a moment and just say, God, we want Your will to be done, and in this here in Wyoming. So that's
right.
what I hope. Well, we've kind of cooked this one, but thanks I know you're busy and you've taken time to come in, and I so appreciate your perspective and understanding of this legislative process and being on top of things. I know it's part of what you do, but it's you make it easy for the rest of us to understand. So thanks, Nathan. Well, in the meantime, I hope you will pray for your legislature, the people that are in your jurisdiction, and be praying for them. They got big decisions to make for our state, for our city, for our teachers. I'm sure all those things are rolled in there, and so be praying for that. In the meantime, I hope that you will be strong and very courageous. God bless you all.